One day after a truce is reached between Ukraine and Russia, both sides are accusing the other of breaking it. In a U.S. brokered deal, Ukraine and Russia agreed to pause military attacks on infrastructure. Now, Ukraine says the Russians launched over 100 drones last night, but most were shot down or disabled. Meanwhile, Russia says Ukraine launched a drone attack in the Crimea peninsula, leading to power outages. Both sides have denied launching the attacks. And joining us now with more is Andrij Dobriansky, the Director of Communications for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andrij, good to be with you. With Ukraine and Russia really pointing the finger at each other, what happens from here?
I think this is simply a repeat of what we've seen over the course of this now 11-year war. Remember when there was that contentious meeting in the White House, one of the things that President Zelensky said was there's been 25 times since he was president, so that's beginning in 2019, that he made deals with Russia where they broke those agreements. So similarly, the United States is now coming across this very aggressive negotiation, but really a dishonest negotiation. What happened after the phone call with President Trump, President Putin, was that there were two different press readouts, and they decided to enter things like having a hockey tournament in the United States, things that the United States wasn't in agreement with. So similarly, what's happening in Saudi Arabia is we're having these long discussions, but then after the fact, Russia releases, oh, but we want this other stuff as well, and it's detrimental to the peace process.
Yeah, French President Emmanuel Macron said today that a proposed European armed force could be deployed to Ukraine in the event of an eventual Russian attack. What more do you know about this, and your thoughts on all of it?
Well, what's happening in Europe is there's a lot of talk about potentially putting peacekeepers on the ground after a negotiated ceasefire. However, that's not coming anytime soon. What President Macron said today definitely buoys the hopes of Ukraine that members of the Coalition of the Willing, which is what it's being called in Europe, many countries, not just Europe and France and the UK, but many countries would like to help Ukraine in some way. And there's been some vacillating in terms of the discussion, because 2 weeks ago it was very strongly about having their peacekeepers deployed. Then it kind of slowed down, but I think what's happening out of Saudi Arabia and the increase of attacks, I don't think that's being reported enough. The increased attacks against hospitals, against children's facilities, that's all happened since the time that President Trump began these negotiations.
Andrij, almost out of time here, but I want to ask you, quickly, how important is it that peace is achieved, and really what's at stake here?
What's at stake is how Europe is going to go forward. Obviously, what's being mentioned by the United States about Europe arming itself up is different than what the United States policy has been since World War II. We never wanted to see Germany arm up again. We never wanted to see more nuclear states. But if we don't contain this problem now, I think the biggest issue for the world will be, do other countries feel safe without having a nuclear weapon? Because Ukraine was the one that gave up the third largest nuclear force, and this is the way it's being treated. So that's the future of the world that we need to worry about.
All right, Andrij, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.